Good evening again, everyone. All those joining us on YouTube for our Wednesday night Dharma talk, and those joining via Zoom, part of the socially engaged Buddhist training. I have the great pleasure and honor of introducing Bill deBuys, who is a local and a friend and a member of our Sangha. And I've actually am remiss that I've never had the pleasure of hiking the Himalayas with Bill, but I know that Roshi and Noah and Wendy and many others have. And part of the last journey they were on together was alchemized into a book that is released later this month. It's Bill's 10th book, which is somewhat stunning. And it's called The Road or the Trail to Kanjiroba, Rediscovering Earth in an Age of Loss. And just a little bit about Bill's background. He's a neighbor to Roshi up in the mountains at Prajna. He's had a ranch there for many decades and is a conservationist as well as a writer. He's had many different kind of postings as a conservationist. He's been a distinguished visiting scholar at the Library of Congress, a Kluge scholar. He's had a Guggenheim Fellowship, a Lyndhurst Fellowship, and was also, and this was really impressive when I first heard it, he was also the chair of the Via Caldera Trust, which, if you don't live nearby, you don't know the Via Caldera probably, but is this expanse, this 89,000 acre expanse of stunning land that has been kept in trust for some time now, and he administered that for a while. And the one thing I'll add about you, Bill, I don't know if you know this, is that we went on a walk up at Prajna, and Willow, my dog, was still a pup and kind of incorrigible and speedy and would jump on everyone and go between trees, and we couldn't keep her calm. And Bill called her an unguided missile, and that was her nickname for the rest of her puppy years. So Bill, it's wonderful to have you in the Zendo. It's a treat for us, and it's all yours. Thanks for being here.
Well, thank you very much, Kozan, for that introduction. And when someone gives a talk, it's typical to say, thank you for having me. Well, today I really, really mean that, because I'm grateful that you've allowed me to come into the Zendo today. I know there are all kinds of restrictions and complications with COVID and so forth. And it's just great to be here talking to human beings instead of a screen alone. But I want to say to everyone out there in the ether, it's great to be talking to you as well. Coming back to Upaya is always feels to me like a little bit like coming home. It's just such a wonderful place to be and a place to learn and grow. The other thing that people do at the beginning of talks, and I'm doing it, is to thank the people who make the talk possible. And in this case, it goes beyond the usual dimensions of that kind of gratitude. A gigantic thanks, I see you up in the corner, Roshi, to Roshi Joan Halifax for giving me the opportunity to participate in 2 Nomads expeditions in Dolpo, one in 2016 and one in 2018. These were life-changing experiences for me, and also enormous literary opportunities, which I pray I've made the most of. Noah and Wendy were on those trips. Ang Mo, who is one house away or so, was on those expeditions. Other people who are no doubt listening in may have been on that, and I want to extend that thanks to all of the nomads What a great community it was to be part of. And I learned so much from everyone on those trips. So thank you, thank you. So I'm going to talk about this new book, which is, as Kozan said, just about to go out into the world. It's like sending your kid off to college or something like that. You know, you hope you've done the right thing and that this new being, this new thing will have a good and productive life, and you just have to send it out there. And there's a funny thing about this book business. You spend years writing a book, draft after draft, teaching yourself, always imperfectly, how to say what you want to say. And inevitably, the big payoff is that if you keep at it, eventually you realize that you've said things that you didn't know you had it in you to say. That's the good news. The bad news, at least for an introvert like me, is that once you've finished the book, you have to learn how to talk about it, which is a little bit oxymoronic, because if what you had wanted to do is talk, maybe you would have made a podcast or a TED Talk or stood braying on a street corner. But you would not have sat at your desk alone week after week and month after month making sentences. So here I am, come to talk to you about this book and to confess that if it were easy to talk about, I would not have written it. I would just have said it. And I would say it now, except that it took me 4 years and 211 pages to get as far as I did. And the thought of compressing the gist of all that into something tidy makes me feel worse than inadequate. But here goes. First, the book is the third part of a trilogy. A decade ago, I did a book on climate change. It was called A Great Aridness, Climate Change and the Future of the North American Southwest. And then shortly after that, in fact, I left on the expedition for the next book, I think the day that the final copy went into the publisher on A Great Aridness. Next, I did a book on humankind's war against wildlife, and that was called The Last Unicorn, a search for one of Earth's rarest creatures. So now I am come to the third book of the trilogy, which is this one, and it asks, when we know what we know about our mistreatment of Earth, how do we keep our heads together? How do we keep doing the work to save what we can and also save the best aspects of ourselves, if not our very lives, in the process? It comes down to the question of how do we not lose heart? And if you turn that question around, it means how do we keep our hearts? And how do we keep committed to the cause of caring for our planet? And how do we keep ourselves from growing numb or cynical or any of 1,000 flavors of crazy, which you can see in the news almost every day, even when those news articles about fires and floods and ocean currents and extinction and so forth are so consistently bad? How do we keep our hearts when the prospects for what we think of as success have become thinner than hair? This is the problem I carried when I went to Nepal with Upaya's Nomads clinic in 2016. And I doubt if I need to tell anyone here about the Nomads clinic, but just for the sake of completeness, it is a project of Upaya. Its expeditions are both medical missions and pilgrimages. The clinic is the brainchild and the heart child of Roshi Joan Halifax. The expeditions deliver health care to remote regions of Nepal, in communities that are ethnically Tibetan and culturally probably more authentically traditional than perhaps any other communities now surviving in Tibet. To return to the problem, the problem of botched earth care is global. But for me, and I suspect for many of you, perhaps all of you, it's also personal. Here are a few lines from the introduction to the book. My work has taken me to badly disturbed environments where losses are high and prospects for improvement slim. But most of these places have also overflowed with beauty. They have fundamentally changed how I see the world. Studying the climate system has had a similar effect, revealing the complexity of the natural world in new and deeper ways. These experiences have been like arrows from a peculiar kind of Cupid, deepening my awe and my love for the planet. And this enchantment, in turn, leads to a paradox. These are more lines from early in the book. My delight in the beauty of the natural environment must coexist with grief at its destruction. These emotions are like cellmates who cannot get along. They dwell in my head and my heart, and their constant argument creates a moral ache, piercing at times, that frequently sours the taste of life. Skipping ahead just a few sentences from that passage, the text continues, we tell ourselves that for the sake of future generations, we must leave the world at least as good as we found it, and then we don't. Or at least most of us don't. We foul what we have inherited and diminish its beauty. Many of us are hardly sensible of this dereliction, yet I know that the grief I feel is not particular to me. I pray that walking will help. And so I went walking. I went walking with the Nomads in Dolpo in 2016, and then returned with them in 2018. And it took the second trip to make sense of the first one. Because when everything is completely new, as it was for me in 2016, my senses become so overloaded that I am nearly as oblivious to what's really going on as a dog watching television. So I had to go back the second time to understand the first one. And both trips were marvelous in more ways and at more levels than I can possibly describe. I think both times we walked somewhere around 140, maybe 150 miles. We were out for 4 weeks or 5 weeks, something like that. It was long enough to become really settled in the life of the trail, which is part of the book, one of the main themes of the book. But in the interest of full disclosure, I should tell you that the book is not just about the Nomads expeditions. Its Himalayan story is intertwined with two other stories, which recount the origins of two powerful scientific theories, the theory of natural selection and the theory of plate tectonics. These theories fundamentally altered our understanding of Earth. But why build them into the book? Well, there's a second paradox that I want to tell you about. Thanks to those two theories, one in the 19th century and one in the 20th century, we people alive today occupy a bizarre and stunning historical moment. For the first time on Earth, and probably for the first time in a very large neighborhood of the universe, conscious life, that is to say, us, can tell itself the true history of its planet, of its world, and of the development of its own species. This has never happened before. And we can do that without resorting to magic. It's a true story. Think of it. We, those of us here on this planet today, can tell ourselves the biography of Earth, and within that biography, we have pretty well sketched out the chapter that is us. Plate tectonics, the second of the two big theories, was fleshed out in the 1950s and 60s. So I realize I am more antique than most of you. Roshi's and my generation, we were kids back then in the 50s and 60s, was the first to grow up with this point of view, with the point of view of plate tectonics and all that it led to. And it led to things that we're hardly conscious of. This wonder-filled understanding exists, however, in a context of rather bitter irony. Even as humankind has acquired this near omniscience, we are well advanced in destroying the creation of which we are a part. So this ironical paradox is also part of the starting point of the book. Another big thing I can tell you about the book is that in the end, I actually found what I was looking for. I didn't know I would when I started out, but I got where I thought I needed to go. I actually got answers to my questions. But right now, right here, I can't tell you what those answers are. And this is not some cheesy spoiler alert. I really mean it. The lessons don't fit into sound bites. They work their way into you. They add up and become coherent only in the course of the journey that produced them. And the book is the distillation of that journey. And I hope that people who read the book will be able to arrive at those same answers through the experience of the book. I try to summarize those lessons in the very final lines of the book, which actually took form in a hotel room in Kathmandu, where Roshi was going around the room after the 2018 expedition and asking each of us to comment on what we had learned, how we felt, where we were, checking in at the end of our 100 and some mile trek. And I said almost these exact words, and they're the last words of the book. Every day a yatra, and yatra means pilgrimage in the Himalayan world. Every day a yatra, every situation a clinic. Absorb the beauty, build an ark, be alive. Those are just 16 words. That's the whole book in 16 words. But to unpack them, you have to take the journey. The trails of Dolpo are the journey. The clinics we held, the people we treated and learned from, the service we tried to render, the exhaustion we felt, the beauty we beheld, the camaraderie we enjoyed, the hardship we witnessed, all that is part of the journey, our life on the trail. That's what I've tried to pack into the book. It's a book about hope, but not a simple kind of hope. It's a book about finding your way, but only after losing it. It's a book about Earth's beauty, not as adornment, but as nourishment. It's also a book about science, but not the science of power and control, rather the science that swings open the gates of wonder. It is a book about extraordinary people, the Dolpo, and the cheerful stoicism that enables them to live in one of the most demanding environments on planet Earth. And it's a book about that environment, the backside of the Himalaya, pressed hard against the Tibetan plateau, where spaciousness, difficulty, and inspiration travel parallel paths toward infinity. I'm going to read a passage or two to share that journey. And the first one sort of develops that theme of everyday a yatra. It's partly about what one can learn from life on the trail. And I'll confess, it is probably the preachiest part of the whole book. So if you are allergic to preachy books, just know that this is as bad as it gets. So we're coming down from one of the high passes. This is early in the story, about a third of the way in, I suppose. Ahead and behind, people walk in small groups, which gradually string out, breaking into threes, twos, and ones. I usually prefer the ones. It is good to walk alone, to match freedom of movement with freedom of thought, for the presence of another person can be constraining, even in silence. One wonders how that person is feeling, whether he or she is tired, hungry, or wants to rest or talk, but doesn't say so, lest you do not. Or perhaps you want to pause and just look at a far horizon, or wander into a ravine and take a leak, or walk especially slowly or rather fast. And what would the other person think about that? Such thoughts are noise. Solitude is less noisy. There will be plenty of time in camp for conversation, plenty of time to hear everyone's news and enjoy the pleasure of interaction. But in the meantime, the trail is a place to strip down and shed the unnecessary. At home, it's so often the reverse. Clutter abounds. So much of our lives centers on the things we own and consume. At a societal level, we even tell ourselves to measure well-being through GDP and other and similar indices by the volume of the things we purchase and the rate at which we do so. More is better. Faster is better too. To say otherwise in the political sphere is apostasy. In order to maximize the buzzing of our economic hive, we submit ourselves to a bath of urgings. Signs, screens, and the amplified voices of strangers exhort us to buy food and drink, clothes and contraptions, and to ally with one company to fatten our wallets and another to slim down our waists. On the trail, we towel off from the bath of urgings. The din goes silent and sounds of place arise. We take mental as well as physical steps. Toward what? The options are profuse. We construct our thoughts from what is before us and steer our course according to weather, terrain, and other stern conditions. Within those limits, paradoxically, we enjoy great freedom. Every day on the trail becomes a kind of pilgrimage, a yatra in the language of the Himalaya. Pilgrims are people who journey towards sacred goals. And what lies nearer the sacred than an understanding of how to live and for what? Such freedom includes responsibility. On the trail, we render assistance to our fellows, should they need it, and we strive to stay in good form. We must avoid getting hurt, which besides being unpleasant, imposes burdens on others. And so we walk alertly, mindful of our step. We find the pace that is right and keep to it. I will confess to walking like an old man, slower than most, but steady. This is also how a Sherpa walks. Although slow for a Sherpa, looks fast to me. One keeps moving, which is not a bad metaphor for most situations. I think about this as I age, that the only way to keep moving is to keep moving. A scrap of reasoning no less true for being circular. And so we move down the trail, you and I, with the goal of moving mindfully, aware of our step and aware too of our companions ahead and our companions behind, and of others whom we may meet along the way, any of whom may need our help as we may need theirs, which amounts to a pretty fair metaphor for other, larger journeys. So now I have to change my glasses, I realize, and put on my reading glasses. And some of you who are on the trail with me may recognize leukotape on the ends of my glasses. Leukotape is the best remedy for blisters on the trail, and it also is a pretty good thing for fixing eyeglasses that a puppy has chewed. I've got to make a decision on the fly here. I think we do have time. I'm going to read one more little piece about being on the trail, and then I'm going to read a piece about one of the clinics. So this next piece is, again, just about me. But most of the book is not just about me, I just want to assure you. But this connects, again, to more of that theme of everyday a yatra. In fact, it is an episode in the book that is titled Yatra. The long climb up from Shiman, which Govinda, one of the muleteers, took at a lope, is for me a metronomic trudge. Step upon step, breathing hard, I think only of the act of walking. With amusement, I realize I am still learning to walk. I am learning, for instance, that I must walk slowly enough that I do not need to rest. At the right pace, my lungs and legs work in synchrony, and I neither gasp nor feel weak. If I stop longer than a few seconds, I lose my rhythm. It's as though my lungs and legs leave their posts, go on break, and refuse to come back. And even when forced to resume their duties, they resist working together. The trick is to keep them at their jobs. Like the tortoise that raced the hare in Aesop's fable, I need to stay in motion. Old Aesop must have walked up many a mountain. I am lightheaded near the top of the climb. My trail mates sprawl on rocks, their packs beside them. And here comes a family of villagers, mother, father, and young boy, headed down to Shiman. In Dolpo, upon encountering strangers, you bow slightly. If your hands are free, you might bring them together in a gesture of prayer, and you say, Namaste. It's a simple word, but profound in its depth. It roughly translates as, I bow to the divine in you. By contrast, our English hi and hello have no more meaning than marks of punctuation. Each member of the passing family says, Namaste to me. Namaste, I say back, and their bright smiles continue to shimmer in my mind's eye minutes after they're gone. I probably need to drink some water. This morning, Tenzin spoke in our circle. As usual, his delivery was staccato and epigrammatic, more poem than paragraph. Tenzin's gift is to mix the cosmic with the trivial. Stop. Take view into you, he coached. Absorb mountain. Eat later. More important than snack bar, than granola bar, is getting blessings from our journey. He paused, looking around the group to gauge his audience. Every day a yatra, he said. A yatra being a religious journey or pilgrimage. All we have been through, you will feel this. you will feel lighter, I think. Such lightness, I imagine, would render one indifferent to whether the trail climbed or fell, whether the distance to go was long or short. Such lightness might even enable the resolute pilgrim to round a bend and say, Namaste, and mean it to any other creature, be it saint, songbird, or snow leopard. On this day, alas, I cannot tell my lightness from my lightheadedness, but perhaps, if I keep walking, eventually I might. So, enough about me. I want to read an excerpt, probably not the whole episode. This book is composed, by the way, of 61, not chapters, I think of them. I think of them as just episodes. 61. It's a concession to the age of ADHD and the short attention spans of everyone who spends time with the internet and all the rest of this stuff. Anyhow, those short episodes were also enabled me to weave together the stories, not just of the expeditions, but of Darwin's discovery of natural selection and the parallel story in the 20th century of the discovery of plate tectonics theory. So anyhow, this is an episode late in the book. It's one of the last episodes I wrote, and it's derived from a day on the 2018 expedition. And I know some of you, Wendy in particular, and Ong Mo, will remember this day, and Roshi as well. It's episode 53, titled Clinic Notes. No one gets out of here unchanged. The lessons of the clinics are never far out of mind, and the agents of change, more often than not, are the patients. At one clinic, a paralyzed young man crabbed sideways past the triage table into our cluster of tents. His mother walked beside him. He moved horizontally to the ground, with one unbending leg stuck out as stiffly as a tree limb, and the other cramped beneath his body. His calloused fists punched the earth in alternation so that he swiveled slowly across the barley stubble. Prem assigned him to Michael Lobatz. Michael Lobatz was the neurologist in the clinic. One of our guides, Dawa Sherpa, a mountaineer who has summited K2 and Everest, led him to the specialist tent and waited with him. The young man's predicament recalled a passage from the Snow Leopard. Heading west from Pokhara toward Dolpo, past the last of the roads then existing, Matheson and Schaller passed a girl, quote, dragging bent, useless legs. Perhaps in his description of the girl, Matheson had in mind to foreshadow the crippled lama he would meet at Sakang. Perhaps he meant only to record what he saw and what moved him. His words have moved many readers since. Quote, nose to the stones, goat dung and muddy trickles, she pulls herself along like a broken cricket. The sentence stops me cold. No phrase better evokes the cruelty of the world than broken cricket. Yet the image also sets the girl at a distance, away from the reader, which is the way most of us witness grave misfortune. At the clinic, the young man with the pretzeled body, broken though he was, did not seem broken. His gaze was warm, his eyes clear. Later, when we met in circle, Dawa said that when she looked at him, he did not flinch, but looked back openly and softly, revealing a deep calm. Dawa is no stranger to sacrifice and trial, and she said that the gaze of the paralyzed young man moved her deeply. There was a lot of beauty there. There was a lot there. Michael Lobatz also spoke. The young man, he said, was about 20. He had suffered a stroke within months of birth, and his paralysis and deformity were the result. Michael thought that with injections of Botox to release frozen muscles, together with a program of physical and occupational therapy, the young man might literally get on his feet again. This boy, he said, probably has normal intelligence and could have a reasonably normal life. Michael's voice tightened as he labored to say, he could be more than a crawling person on the ground. The words came out high-pitched, strangled. We waited a long moment for Michael to gather himself. Arrangements could be made in Kathmandu, he said, his voice regaining its tone. Michael explained that he had discussed the possibilities with Dr. Sonam and with the young man and his mother, who solemnly thought the matter over. Lobatz admitted being stunned when the mother politely declined. But her choice was clear, and her son seemed wholly in agreement. There was no reasonable way for him to be brought down from the heights of Dolpo to a road where transport might be procured. Even for the able-bodied, such a journey entailed days of walking. And the medical interventions the mother foresaw would transform her relationship with her son and alter the balance of their lives together, which they cherished without resentment. No one had to explain that when the mother died, perhaps not long in the future, the son would die too, for there would be no one to take care of him. That was simply how things were. I'm going to skip a little bit toward the end of this passage, this episode. We're skipping the discussion of another case. In the afternoon following this particular clinic, we sat on stools in a circle beside the tents, a chill settling like dew with the waning of the sun. As ever, the little black crows called chuffs spun and squabbled overhead. The reports and observations continued. There was talk of malnutrition among pregnant and nursing mothers and among the very young. Mild distensions of the belly had been noted in a few cases, but subtler problems were no doubt widespread. Dr. Sonam said that deficiencies in vitamins A and C and possibly other nutrients were probably typical for children of the region. The conversation shifted to diagnostic quandaries provoked by our patients' other ailments, the pervasive joint pain, dizziness, gastritis, general weakness, and recurring migraines. There was laughter when someone pointed out that Prem and the triage nurses must be losing focus. They had long since taken to writing whole body in the space for complaint on a majority of intake forms. There were expressions of thanks. Ang Mos in particular, who said that without the kindness of her grandmother and others, she would be trapped in the same toilsome life endured by her patients in the women's tent. And there were tears too, including Wendy's, when she reflected on what those women have to go through, the drudgery, the continuous pregnancies, the shunning associated with menstruation. And there was satisfaction as well, and not just from the provision of analgesics. Michael Lobatz described a mother's relief when he told her that her child's migraines would get better. He said doctors are never more fortunate than when they can provide the gift of hope. The differences between patients in Dolpo and patients in the US attracted frequent comment. One doc said that most of his stateside patients were what he called the worried well, people whose anxieties outweighed their physical problems. Don't get me wrong, he said, a lot of people need intervention, and to provide that is very satisfying. But the practice is not like here, where you think at least that you're having more impact. His friend and colleague from Colorado said it was the gratitude and resilience of the Dolpo Pa that impressed him most. They come in with joint pain, a blown out knee, GI distress, a horrible rash, whatever, and maybe we can't help them. Sorry, we say, we wish we could do something for you. And they get up and smile. They say, that's fine, thanks anyway. And off they go, as cheerfully as they came in. Patients back in my clinic are so different. Whatever hurts them becomes so much bigger a thing. And we give them meds for blood pressure or pain, but they really seem to want us to fix something bigger than that, something we don't have meds for. They want us to fix the pain that's in their mind or in their souls. My Nepali patients have lots of problems, but not that one. So that's what I have to offer you today, people. And looking at the screen here, with my eyesight, I can't really recognize people very well. There was a rumor that Prem might join us from Kathmandu. I hope you're out there, Prem. I love you. I wish I could see you again. And I wish you the well as you soldier up to COVID in Nepal. And I'd like to say thanks again to everyone who has joined this little gathering and listened to me for the last 45 minutes. So thank you all, and namaste.
Thank you, Bill. I know Roshi is unmuted. Roshi, did you want to say a few words?
Bill, it just brought our service and the spirit of it and the spirit of the people and of the landscape so strongly back to me. And I also want to say that this book is coming out just as the report from the United Nations, from the IPCC, where I think many of us are reading that report and feeling the kind of despair, solastalgia, that has disabled many people of all ages across this planet. And the book gives, I feel, having read it several times, thank you for allowing me the preview. And it's not just about the Nomads Clinic. I have to say, the way you portray Darwin's life is just mind-boggling. I mean, it's jaw-dropping. And also bringing the history of the plate tectonics, you know, and our different relationship with time. And that is one of the critical things that I experienced a year after year in returning to the Himalayas, how time collapses into being, that it disappears separateness, and that you become one with the trail. The other thing I want to say, that reading the book,
What happened? Was
something just you just disappeared. Oh my God.
You're back.
Now you've reappeared. There you go again. It could be a weather.
It's probably just the connection to the camera, because I think they can hear us. They're still on.
Okay. You know, the other thing I wanted to say, Bill, is that first of all, traveling with you was because you're such an amazing observer, not only of humankind, but of this earth, but also that we experienced And I know it so intimately that this experience of pilgrimage and service is truly a rite of passage. And when you have reflected the transformative nature of this experience in terms of our own, those of us who traveled together and what we went through and the difficulties that we encountered, combined with the encounter with peoples who have extraordinary resilience. And it changes one at a cellular level, that the petty complaints that drive us to consume and also to undermine the human spirit, which has brought, so much sickness, not only to people, but to this earth. One has a complete, for me, I won't say everyone goes through it, but it is a revelation. It's a cellular and spiritual transformation that comes from being on a landscape that is so raw and so high and so unforgiving that actually forgiveness is revealed in that direct experience. To share that with you, and with now it's hundreds of people who have served in the clinics since 1980 and brought, goodness into that Himalayan world. But actually, the goodness is not equal to the goodness that we receive from those whom we encounter. And your book reflects that in such an extraordinary way. So I'm just, it's filled with wisdom and surprise and mystery, and also great humility. The kind of imperialist attitude that round-eyed people so often bring into, and colonialist attitude, into the experience of connecting with the remotest areas on the earth, really it's so raw, it's stripped away through what we know in that experience. So I just thank you with all my heart for capturing it. And I feel that the book will be a manual for guiding us into this next phase of encountering this catastrophe that seemed imminent, but rather distant. And now it is upon our actual shores. Fire, as you say, flood, famine, refugees, millions upon millions of climate refugees, and many of us, or our children or grandchildren, will become those too.
Yeah.
Thank you, my good friend. And
Thank you.
for those of you who don't know, we live in 2 watersheds. Bill and I share 2 watersheds, the Trampas River watershed and the Rio Grande watershed. Both of those rivers run, in our, right down our shared valleys. And to share those sacred watersheds with you and to continually learn from you, Bill, has been a privilege. It is truly for me what social engagement is about. It is about bringing wisdom and compassion together, and you do this as no other person does. I thank you. So I just, we're going to move now into the connection with our community, our socially engaged community, for a period, just for back and forth with Bill. And I just want to thank the almost 200 people who are on YouTube for joining us, joining Bill. And please, we put in the chat stream, you can get a signed copy of the book from Collected Works. You don't have to get it from Amazon. And I encourage you to get it and read it. It is an extraordinary read, Bill, and totally surprising, page after page.
Thank you so much. Yeah. One thing I'll add, by the way, is that if the book has good qualities, they're partly there because Roshi is a very good editor. And guided me past a few pitfalls and also helped me shape up the ending, which resisted me for a long time. But finally now it's my favorite part of the book. So Roshi, can't thank you enough for all of that.
You know, I will, we should probably say a little bit, just a tiny bit. You know, I got to the end of Bill's book and I know that feeling of moving from Ringmo, you know, down to Denai. It's like, oh my God, you know, you're dropping in altitude and your spirit is kind of collapsing step after step and your morale is following your spirit. And I dinged Bill on reflecting that experience as the ultimate experience. You know, I begged him to look again. And we had many conversations, not to make something good out of it, but actually to make something wise out of it. And you did it. You brought it home.
Thank you. Thank you.
So thank you again, Bill. And I just want to pause for a moment because I know our community on YouTube is with us, and we're going to end that portion of tonight with our Mahasangha. So thank you for joining us. I hope you'll join us again next week. And for the Hidden Lamp, if you're interested, this weekend, ongoing series. And we'll step into a conversation now, as we always do with these talks. And so I think everyone kind of knows the tempo and the kind of style, but raise your digital hand if you'd like to ask something. And, you know, Bill, usually these are just a few questions. We don't go too late into the night, but just because I'm closer to the monitor, I can call on people as they chime in.
And Kosan, I wonder if you would introduce Angmo.
Sure. Well, I can let Angmo introduce herself. Angmo's right here. I don't know, Angmo, it looks like you're at home, but I'm sure you can unmute, or maybe I need to press that to say hi. Hi. I don't think we can hear you.
Yeah, I have some audio issue.
There we go.
Okay.
Yeah, we can hear you now. We can hear you well.
Okay. I don't know what to say. It was and thank you, Bill, and thank you, everyone. It was just too emotional for me. It just felt like I'm on the trail, and yeah, I don't know. It just felt so real. It almost took me back to the journey, and I'm out of words. Yeah, especially when Bill talked about Dawa, the boy who came to our clinic. I have a very beautiful picture of him. I remember at the end when we asked him like what he wanted eyeglasses, a sunglass, and the next morning me, Wendy, and Dan went to his house to deliver the glass, and he was so happy. So we had that picture, and I was just looking back at that photo right now, and it just took me back, you know, just like seeing his smile, and not much to say, just processing.
Can you share it, Angmo? Can you share
Yeah.
the picture on your screen?
And as Angmo is doing it, just to let you all know, Angmo, who's one of the co-directors of Nomad's clinic and is from Do in Dolpo. And we met in one of our early times in Dolpo, and just was an incredible presence, and is a nurse, and then was accepted at the University of Washington School of Public Health, and is finishing her master's, and to return to Dolpo to serve in that community. And so much of what we've learned about Dolpo has been through Angmo. So
thank you.
And watching your life bloom in the way that it has, Angmo. Angmo has been serving at La Familia since being here in Santa Fe, the homeless community. I don't want to say you're a true bodhisattva and make you feel weird, but there you
great.
are.
Yeah, this is the
picture.
So
Oh,
yeah, I just like his look, seeing his smile, you know, it's just like he was so happy just to get that class and no complaint about what he is going through. He's just like in total acceptance and just living a life. I don't know. It was just very, very emotional for me, just very touching, and yeah. Stop there.
Angmo, thank you.
Okay. Okay.
So we would invite you, or Kozan will invite you. The
well,
rest
I've
of
already
you.
invited everyone to ask questions, but I think we're speechless. And that's fine too. There is a kind of Mahasangha of people who've been on this pilgrimage, who've been traveled as nomads together. And in particular, if there's anyone on who wants to reflect on that journey, please raise your hand. But for now, Virginia, I'm gonna unmute you.
Thank you. Am I unmuted?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, so thank you so much, Bill. This is such beautiful and profound writing, and I wonder if you could talk a little bit about your process of writing in terms of this journey. I felt it was so immediate, and I just I'm curious, and I'm a writer, so it is a little bit like, how did you process those moments on the journey to prepare for what you eventually obviously worked as a writer into this narrative?
Oh, thanks for that question, Virginia. As my companions on the trail will attest, I always had a notepad in my shirt pocket. And at every break, every time we stopped to rest on the trail or whenever, I pulled that out and I wrote notes day by day by day. I filled one notebook after another. I think I filled 5 of those notebooks, writing on both sides of the paper. So that's like 500 notebook pages in 2016, and almost that much in 2018. I also, through walking, which I often did alone, as I described in the passage I read, I'm always thinking about things I'm going to say. I'm always trying to process the experience. Oh my goodness. Trying to process the experience in sentences. And so then when we stop, I whip out the pen and paper and write down the sentences I've been composing as we were walking. And then when I get home, the first thing I do is, I don't know, she's probably not on this call, but my dear friend, Catherine Baca, the only person on earth I would entrust my notebooks to transcribe them, works her way through this terrible scrawl and gives me a text then that becomes a notebook. And I keep that at hand when I'm writing. And I also keep lots of photographs at hand on the computer. And I'm not much of a photographer, but for me, photographs are another way of note-taking. And so if I'm writing about that clinic where the paralyzed young man was treated or seen, I'll bring up photographs from that day, and I'll look at those to get that tangible detail from the very day of the event. And then I just rewrite and rewrite and rewrite and rewrite.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Virginia, for the question. Joyce.
I wonder, thank you so much for your wonderful talk. I have so enjoyed all of it. And I wonder if you could just speak briefly maybe about how any kind of spiritual nature helped you serve as you were going along on this journey or on these journeys. in working with the joys and the difficulties of what you found on the trail and in the villages and that kind of thing?
Well, one of the epigrams of the book is a quote from Bruce Chatwin, an author you probably know, who wrote In Patagonia and some other really fine books. Anyhow, the quote goes something like this: "My God is the God of walkers. If you walk hard enough, you probably don't need any other God." And the quote is a bit irreverent, obviously, but for me, walking is the primary way that I come into myself, that I become still. It works for me better than a sitting meditation, in a way. And to walk as much as we did day after day for weeks on end, for me, takes me into a place where I feel finally really in touch with myself, with the land, with the environment, with the people around me. And I feel that kind of stillness that I think is right there next to spirituality, if it's not close to the same thing. So for me, those trips were deeply spiritual experiences, and add to that the pujas and the gampas and all the meditation sessions that we had at the beginning of every day and all the rest. But it was really the walking and the walking.
That's beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joyce. And our last question tonight, is it Marina?
Yes, it's Marina. Thank you so much. And I'm was really also just really inspired by all of your words. And I'm also got the feeling that you receive so much from this journey, from the populations that you're working with, almost like receiving way more than you're able to give, than you're able to provide resources or assistance. And so I was also pleased to see that some of the donations of the book will be earmarked for the COVID relief effort. I'm just also curious about how that aid is provided to these communities through, I suspect through other local groups that you're connected with, but also just if you could speak a little bit about maybe there is this sort of feeling or tension that that you could do so much more. And if you had those feelings, I'd love to hear more about that. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, always. I mean, the feeling of inadequacy is a feeling that I know very, very well. I have a lot of experience with it. I'll tell you just a little thing about the process of the book, and then I want to ask Wendy or Angmo or maybe Roshi to speak about the COVID relief, because I don't know the details there, and those are the people who really know what's going on and what needs to go on. But in the monkey noise between my ears, I'm a jerk a lot of the time. And that's reflected in the notes that I make a lot. It's reflected in the first drafts of many of the things I write. And learning to absorb from the people we were with is something that I have to work at, and something that doesn't just happen when I'm in contact with them, but it also happens at the writing table when I'm in imaginary contact with them. And my process of writing, it happens again and again. I know this pretty well. I have to gradually expunge the witty, the snarky, the the glib, the turn of phrase master from the manuscript and get down to the soul of it. And so it's a process in my studio alone that I have to really work at. And that's where, in a way, in absentia, I learn the most from the people that I've been with. I know it sounds odd, but it's a reflection of the fact that I'm a slow student and I need to do my homework to get the most from the lessons that I'm given. So having said that, maybe we could ask Ang Mo to speak about COVID relief and what needs to happen in Dolpo and where the few dollars that we can raise might go this time around.
So I think if I'll just give a short overview of what we have done so far and what we can do, especially when it comes to provide support or kind of do work in Dolpo. It always is, for me, it's like at the beginning, it's, oh, there's so much to do. I need to do this. Let's say like, oh, provide food for everyone, like have medicines, everything there. And then there is also a phase where I have to sit back and think of the reality. So what it takes to take all these things up there in the place where you have to walk at least 3 or 4 days just to get to the village, and not counting the tube flight or the 2 or 3 days of bus ride from Kathmandu, from where most of these things that we are going to send are purchased. So how we're going to kind of give there, so just thinking that and then realizing you can only do so much, so just focused on what you can do and what impact that will have in those places kind of really takes time and kind of settle my mind and really think about and then discuss with Wendy and Roshi and also the people who are in the ground doing the work. So it takes a lot of effort in doing that. And that's why in the beginning of last year, the place remained quite safe because the place is so far away from other and there were no infections as such. But this year during the second wave, so people from Kathmandu, especially the healthcare worker who went in these villages to provide vaccine, were infected with COVID, and then they spread the COVID in the village, in the community. But what happened was these people who took vaccine in the village were government staff. So government rescued them in helicopter, which usually for local takes about $5,000, which is like their whole life savings, So they rescued these people, tested them and found that they are positive, but then they didn't do anything in the community to see whether the community are exposed or not, who are infected. They didn't even kind of care to test the other healthcare workers, local healthcare workers who work with these healthcare providers. Then after that, there were people with symptoms, complaining of, oh, I'm having flu-like symptoms. How the villager describe it is, oh, it's a little worse than flu. I cannot go to work. I have fevers, and then I rest for some time and I get well, and then I go back work again, and then it get worse. So there was this, I was really panicked. We were all in panic, like what we need to do. We don't have anything to test there. The government didn't do anything. So we need to act something, but then there is very little to do. We cannot tell people to quarantine, those people who have symptoms to quarantine in their home because it's irrigation time. And if they don't do at that time, it's just like it always depends on time. So they need to work in the field, and the work in the field always take place in community. So they have to do that. And then there are villages, in some villages, they ran out of all the essential medicines, so there are no medicines to give, even the very basic medicines. And the only thing that we can do is supply them with some basic medicines. So we came together with other organizations, and Nomad funded cloth masks, if we think from here, we can just think, oh, let's provide max PPE, like get them tested, like quarantine them. These kind of things doesn't work there. So you have to really sit back and think about that. Yeah, you cannot tell them to wash their hands, like, and because the water is like 20 minutes far, and you cannot tell them to wash their hands as frequently as possible. So we provided cloth masks, some antigen test kits, buy the medicines, but then and some oxygen concentrator, but then it's also like only to places where there is electricity. There's no electricity everywhere. So oxygen concentrator, just because like if someone needs the oxygens, they can at least do that, like before they get transported, which is kind of rare. So, but then again, it's like, how do we transport them? How can we take them there? So then Nomad again has to fund the helicopter, which is about, I told you, like, so fund whole this process, and we provide them to one village, and they distributed that medicine in different clinics, and we got report that it was very helpful for them, so that healthcare provider can actually, even though they cannot do much, they can actually do something, like give this support. And then later on in July, the government decided to provide vaccine, varicella, to all the districts which are at China border. So they are giving the vaccine, but then the problem is the vaccines are centered in district hospital, which is like 3 days walk, So these vaccinators, what they call government healthcare providers, actually carry these vaccines in ice box in these villages. And you never know whether they are damaged on the way or not. But then when they get in the village, it's like 3 days, after 3 days. So the villager get only 1 day or 2 days to come and get vaccines before they damage or people return back. And the only way we can support is provide them with refrigerator. So Nomad's bought an ice refrigerator in the village where they have electricity. We want to buy for everyone, but there is no electricity. So we can do very little. And that's something that we did. And that refrigerator really helped to reach like 600 people and, get first dose of their vaccine. So hopefully they will get second dose of vaccines. And if we get enough fund in the coming days, we are planning to support more refrigerators in other regions. So Upper Dolpo especially has like 3 rural municipalities. So we provided right now, there is only 1 refrigerator in one place. So our aim would be to provide more refrigerator in different places. And maybe if we have enough fund, we can help them with solar power so they can actually kind of run that refrigerator. And this will not only be helpful for this vaccine, but also for all the children's immunizations, which are like rare. If you search for one child with all essential immunization, it's I think hard. You will not be able to find one child with having all the routine immunization. So just thinking about that, and yeah, these are the things that we plan on doing, and support our other organizations, local organizations who are doing food relief and other parts. So partnership has been really important. And we always work, the people who do this work are always the local people. And also did a lot of menstrual health education and cloth pads distribution. So this is also going to be a very, I think, continuous project which we can do. Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you, Angmo.
Thank you, Angmo, and for all the work you're doing, even from afar. And thank you to Prem, who I know is with us briefly. He maybe doesn't have great service, but Prem, who's in the Himalayas now, was on with us and is doing that work with Angmo. So alas, our evening is coming to a close. Roshi continues to answer some questions in the chat, but one was, will the Nomads Clinic continue? And Roshi was just pointing out that it will when this pandemic subsides, whenever that day may be, and that so much work is going on even now and continues even now. So thank you so much, Bill, for this evening together and for this book, this touchstone of the reflections from the trail and the journey you were on with so many. And perhaps we'll do this again when the book comes out and people have read it. We'll be able to have a conversation. So thank you, everyone. And we'll come back together tomorrow night at 5, as we do every second Thursday. So I look forward to seeing you there.
Thank you, Bill. Dear
Thank you.
Angmo, and thank you, friends, so much. I'm so grateful that you could hear about this work and also the vision of it. And to meet Angmo, you know, it's very, very meaningful for all of us.
Thank you.
And Marina asked about the donation link, and whoops, not that one, said Noah. Noah's going to post it, but we'll also put it in the chat stream tomorrow and send it to you. Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Bye, Bill. Bye, Noah. I'm going to go out and herd cows. They're back in the meadows.